We're lost as a culture. We have gotten ourselves lost. In September of 2009, I went to Midway Island, and on Midway Island is very near the middle of the Pacific Garbage Patch. And there's a phenomenon happening on Midway Island where the Pacific Garbage Patch becomes visible. And that's why I was interested in going there and trying to photograph this phenomenon. And what it is that there's a population of about 1 million albatross that live out on Midway. And the albatross is this huge, extremely beautiful and majestic bird. They're about the size of eagles. And what they do is they make their nest, and they have their baby there on the island, and one of the parents stays with the young when it hatches, and the other parent flies out over the vast polluted Pacific Ocean to fill its belly with food to bring back and feed to the baby. And that has to happen for several months before the baby can learn to fly and then take off with his parents and feed itself. And what the parent comes back with, after flying out maybe 1,000 miles over the Pacific Ocean, what the parent comes back with is a belly completely filled with our plastic junk, with toothbrushes and cigarette lighters and bottle caps and syringes and little chunks of plastic, and they feed it to the babies. And the babies slowly fill up with plastic until they die of starvation, dehydration, and choking. And they're dying out there by the hundreds of thousands every year. And I went there and photographed them. Not a single piece of plastic in any of these photographs was moved, arranged, or placed, not even an inch. This is exactly what I found on Midway Island. And one of the things that was so astonishing to me about it is that Midway Island is one of the remotest places on Earth. It's in the very middle, that's why it's called Midway. It's in the very middle of the Pacific Ocean, which is the largest body of water on Earth. There are more than 2,000 miles of open ocean on all sides of Midway. It's something like 2,800 miles back to the coast of California, about the same distance to Japan and China, 4,000 miles down to Australia. The nearest thing to Midway Island is the Bering Strait, is Alaska and Russia up there. And yet, in this incredibly remote place, is this phenomenon that is remarkably symbolic. This is us. This is American culture. And this is what I really believe about the problem that we're facing, the many problems that we're facing. I think the environmental degradation that's happening in the world right now, the social degradation, it's the external destruction that we're seeing in the world is a reflection of our internal landscape. We're lost as a culture. We have gotten ourselves lost. We've forgotten the basic wisdom of why we're here. What makes us happy? What's important? And in my own belief, the way to get back to that, and from there to transform the memes, to transform our culture, the way to get back to that is through feeling. When we feel something really deeply, that's when we act as humans. I think we're essentially feeling organisms. When we get angry enough, or when we get filled enough with rage, or when we get frightened enough, or when we can connect deeply enough with our grief, then we act. And the way I've heard it said is, if you're a person who wants to change, who influences the way people behave, you're an activist. And if you can influence the way people think, then they automatically change the way they behave. And in that case, you're an advocate. And if you can influence the way people feel, then they automatically change the way they think and the way they behave. And in that case, you're an artist. And there's one step above that, which I don't aspire to be, and that is if you can fundamentally change people's consciousness, then that automatically changes the way they feel and the way they think and the way they behave. In that case, you're a spiritual leader like Martin Luther King or Jesus or the Buddha or Gandhi, and so I really believe in the deep power of feeling, and specifically in the deep power of grief. Because there are all these other feelings, like anger or rage or fear. Those are things that happen automatically to us. That we can, if we're awake enough, if we're conscious enough, we can at least notice that we're feeling those things and then respond in a conscious way. But grief is something that we have to step to with some intention. And anyone here who has been through a death of a loved one, especially a long death where they got to say goodbye, where there was a process to it, anyone who has been through a deep process of grieving like that knows that it's transformational. You come away from the death of a loved one remembering something that you might have forgotten for your entire life up to that point. You remember who you are, you remember what your priorities are, and you know what those priorities are going to be going forward. And it's a hard thing for me to stand up and say, I think we all need to grieve. It doesn't sound like much of a solution to anything. But I think more than anything else, I think American culture needs to feel something. We've lost our ability to feel. It's become dangerous for us to share our feelings with each other culturally. I think it may be fair to say that America is the culture that is the most out of touch with its feelings of any culture in the world right now. There might be some others that are in line with us. But if you look at indigenous cultures, where people sit in circle and they learn how to express their anger from a young age, and they process their rage, they process their grief, they process their fear, these are cultures where, by no coincidence, the entire culture remains in deep contact with the deep wisdom that we all carry. And in my own belief, it's the bringing back of feeling into our culture that will reconnect each one of us with ourself, and that will bring that wisdom forth again. And at that point, it's easy to change our choices. It's easy to change our government or our cultural choices, because then we're all in contact with the deep wisdom that makes that process easy. I still have a little time left, but I think I'm going to end it there because I know you guys could use a little extra time in the schedule. So that's all from me. Thank you so much.